We all hate wasting our time on anything that doesn't deliver results. So if you're really keen on finding new managed service clients in 2025, how do you avoid wasting your precious time on outdated marketing activities? In this new world of AI, some tactics don't work anymore, and some are way more important than they've ever been. I have two special guests today who both believe that PR, public relations, still has a very important place in your MSP's marketing toolbox. Are they right? Are they wrong? The answer just might surprise you.
Hi, I'm Shante Micah, and I am I'm the co-founder of Good News.
Hi, and I'm Josh. I'm the other half of Good News, handle all of the tech and backend infra.
And you know what? This is the first time, I think, in 5+ years of the podcast that we've actually had two guests at the same time. So you guys are already doing a first. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. I'm so excited to have you on because we're going to talk about PR, which in itself is a bit dull. And I say that as an ex-journalist who's also an ex-PR guy, PR being public relations. You two are PR people, but we're not really interested in getting in the media and getting journalists to talk about you. What we're going to talk about today is using PR as a way of building authority, of getting audiences in your market to trust you, to believe you, to understand you, all of those kind of things. And I'm a big fan of using PR and using it to influence the kind of people that ultimately, as an MSP, you want to go on to do business with. So let's first of all just delve a little bit back into your backgrounds. And Shante, just tell us a little bit about you and how you got into this world, how you got going with this business, and how did you meet Josh as your business partner?
Oh, yes. I love this story. So I've been in the PR space, but it's been called brand marketing. It's been called brand awareness. And I've gone in and out of companies. But PR is what I got my master's in 20 years ago. And I stepped into a role that was for global communications. That role after that sent me to Israel, where I was an expat opening up multiple markets. I came back stateside, and that was when the emergence of social media was happening. So I was asked to figure that out for a multi-billion-dollar company at the time, which was interesting. And then I ended up meeting Josh about 11 years ago is what we decided. And it was at a digital marketing agency. And we were both leads. We were both running enterprise accounts. And these were for big companies like ESPN, Time Warner Cable, Dell, Adobe, Citrix, forgetting a lot of them. But Josh was running his team. I was running my team. And we never actually worked on the same team, but we'd find just these sidebar conversations where we would just be talking about things that were important to us. And that's where we both realized that we have a lot of the same values when it comes to how we manage teams, how we create systems that can then align people from the client side to the people that you have on your team. And we were at the same agency for 5 years. Then I went my separate way. Josh has moved all around. But we kept in touch. And about 4 years ago, I reached out to him and I said, hey, I just had this big change in my career. Let's catch up. And from that, we ended up catching up and then becoming accountability partners on separate projects. And then one fortuitous day, Josh was like, would you ever want to do something together? And the idea for Good News came straight after. And it was from a lot of people in my circle that were asking me for big PR strategies because they had no idea how PR worked. It had this mystique to it. And I thought, I think I could do something with that. My frameworks of 20 years, I'll put it into a book and then we'll put it into a system. And then with Josh's background, we turned it into what Good News is, which is engineered omnipresence. Like we're able to engineer this for people and then demystify it so that people in fields like MSP can actually use it, where before it felt like elusive and separate, like a future them problem. So yeah. That's the summary.
That's a great summary. Thank you for that. And I agree with you that PR is a bit mysterious. And in the past, it was very mysterious. And when I was a journalist back in the sort of the mid 90s up till 2005, which is when I started my first business, it was, I remember I hated being contacted by PR companies. But the reason that business owners like MSPs hired PR companies was because they didn't know how to get on the radio, get in the local paper, get in the local TV. And I think what has changed dramatically in the 25, 30 years since is, well, first of all, the local media, well, all media no longer has they don't control the distribution anymore. The internet has put the distribution into anyone's hands. But I think what has gone alongside with that and why companies like yours still exist and still thrive is because the amount of noise has gone up, like probably by X thousand %. Josh, is it worth in 2025? Is it really worth the owner of a small business like an MSP that might have 3, 4, 5 staff? Is it really worth them trying to get media coverage, trying to influence what's said about them on social media? Is that what kind of modern day PR is all about?
This is a phenomenal question. So I come from the digital marketing world. So Shantae and I have very different perspectives on this. So I'm biased towards digital marketing. I come from SEO and content marketing. And so this question hits in a very good way, because now transferring kind of over and really doubling down on PR, I think it shows really where I'm putting my bets. Is PR is the play to invest in right now. And I'll explain why that is. In the past, you could show up via SEO, you could show up via, your content marketing, social, and you could generate noise. You could generate top end noise. And that was great, for a small MSP startup or, whatever type of business. However, that doesn't necessarily translate into trust and credibility. And that's really what we're seeing in today's day and age. And that's further compounded with AI. Everybody's losing trust and getting a little more skeptical. So having trust in your brand, whether you're a massive MSP or you're a much smaller startup, it's absolutely the currency in which you need to leverage for growing your brand. And there's a lot of other factors that go into this. So, and we'll get into, I'm sure, in a minute, but that PR is by far and away the biggest bang for your buck. Dollar in, dollar out, you're going to get 100 times more with PR nowadays than you would have with SEO or kind of any of these other channels. That's exactly what we're seeing.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right. In a second, we are going to come to some practical stuff that MSPs can do to improve their... I'm going to use a term that you use, Shantae, which is omnipresence. I absolutely love that. Being everywhere all at the same time, or the perception of being everywhere. Shantae, in terms of how PR has changed, never mind all those big shifts over decades, the last 2 years, what was it, 2.5 years since ChatGPT went mainstream? As Josh was just saying, anybody can churn out hundreds of pieces of content. That's been a massive game changer in itself. But the core fundamentals of marketing have not changed, which is we will only buy from people that we trust, that we like, that we know, that we have a relationship with, that we perceive as an authority. So how has your work changed and the work that you recommend MSPs and other business owners do? How has that changed in the last couple of years?
I would say that, AI has been this great equalizer when it comes to any type of content you can create. But like with anything, it's garbage in, garbage out. With PR, you can certainly generate a lot of pitches. And I see this happening where journalists are already bombarded, and there's been massive shifts in the media landscape. Traditional media conglomerates laying off a lot of writers, and yet the writers that remain are still required to hit a beat and a body of work with the same cadence, if not more so. Their work has tripled. So they're still required to get those stories. They need your pitches, but what they need are pitches that are pithy and powerful and personal. So they need to be relevant. So just plugging in, into AI, a framework for a PR pitch, it's not going to get you anywhere. We don't need perfection when it comes to PR pitches, but we need precision. I know that a lot of journalists, including yourself, as a host of a show, you get dozens, if not hundreds of pitches per day. And most of them are going to be off the mark because they're not considering relevance. They're not considering the audience before themselves. They're not considering how a journalist is a caretaker for their audience. So the shifts that we're seeing is that it's still a numbers game, because to hit timing, you do need to be pitching regularly, but you need to be pitching with more precision. So that research on the front end is even more important. Knowing what their audience is talking about, knowing the relevant cultural conversations, knowing what they care about, all of that should be demonstrated in your pitch. And your pitch should still be under 200 words. you really have no reason on that initial pitch to go bigger. And
Yeah.
every journalist, they'll see the difference. It is a remarkable difference when you get a pitch that is like, ooh, they got it. And you suddenly become this source to a journalist who's already burdened beyond. So I would say that the things that have changed is precision. You just need a system to create that precision, and then the reps.
Okay, well, let's come on to that system in a second. You mentioned me getting pitches. I only get around 20 to 25 a week, which is not unbearable, but I was saying just before recording, yours stood out, as you would hope a PR companies would stand
Hopefully.
out, but
Right.
because you'd actually done the research, you'd actually looked into me, you'd clearly spent time on it, and not just got an AI to transcribe an episode and pull out I listened to this and this was my insight, because the insights are never real insights. You can see through that a mile off. So if I'm doing that, then journalists who are getting hundreds of pitches a day are definitely seeing that. Let's bring this back to making this real to the MSP owner. So the average MSP who's listening to this or watching this on YouTube is the business owner. They've got somewhere between 3, 5, 10 staff, eager to grow. Their marketing is a bit of a distress activity. It's something they know they have to do, but they don't necessarily enjoy it because it's the complete opposite of tech work. And as we've already established, PR is very good for building trust, building authority, all the things you want as big picture items from your marketing. So Josh, let's throw this at you, and Shantae, feel free to jump in. What's a good system for an MSP owner to go about actually getting that kind of third-party mentions that gives them greater authority, greater credibility?
Absolutely. So I'm going to start kind of small scale, because what we've found is when MSPs are starting to get into this, like you said, it's not their body of work, right? Doing PR, getting those pitches out the door. So I'm going to start small and give you really practical steps here. The first thing that we would recommend almost always is podcasts, getting on podcasts, because there's so many different valuable kind of tangible assets that you get from being on podcasts, but you also get a lot of psychological benefit from being on podcasts. So let me break it down. The first thing that I would recommend an MSP to do, or someone on their team, I would have them go to iTunes or Spotify. And I would say, start looking through different podcasts and aggregate a list of 10 to 20 podcasts that you would love to be on, right? That you have a message, you want to share your message of your brand. I'm not talking about stats. I know once we get into the MSP world, people love stats and the figures, uptime, all of the things that kind of we nerd out on. But instead, look and see what stories you can tell, such as, how you rescued a client from a ransomware attack or something like that, something that's pithy and really tangible. So you'll have your list of 10 to 20 podcasts that you want to be on. Sort them by how much visibility you think they have. You don't need to get really scientific with this in the beginning. Just try to sort them out into, hey, this is a phase 1, meaning this is an emerging podcast, smaller podcast. Phase 2, kind of more middle of the road. They have some momentum, versus phase 3, this is going to be the big top end podcasts that have a massive amount of exposure. And then what you're going to do is you're going to break down your story. So come up with maybe 5 different angles in that story. Take a client case study, right? How you rescued that client from ransomware, and break it out into 5 different angles, right? Oh, we could talk about this way, this way. Break it out and then overlay those two, your list of the podcasts that you want to reach out to, and then those stories. And then this is where the rubber meets the road. When you're writing that pitch, try to synthesize a pitch that is under 200 words. It has to be really short, really pithy, and really, it has to be value to the host, but more importantly, value to their audience. And this is where people start to go wrong when they're leveraging AI tools too heavily, is they come out with these pitches that are more self-serving or serving to the host and not to the audience. And really the core value here is we're creating value for the audience. You satiate that, you fulfill the request of the host, and you win. And then the last step here is find their email. There are a handful of free tools out there you can use. Hunter.io is a great one where you can plug in their domain, the domain of the podcast, find someone to reach out to, and send that pitch. And the reason I say start small is what's going to happen is you're going to start sending these pitches out the door, and you're going to get a lot of misses, but you're going to get some hits. those hits are going to teach you about how to tell your own story. And that's going to be one of the big kind of differentiators, right? Coming from the MSP world, you might think you know how to tell your story, but really you're going to get real world feedback by who responds to you. Oh, that's the way that you're going to tell your story. And then you iterate on that. Your next 10 pitches are going to be kind of changes of that same pitch. And then you're going to continue down the line. And what we've seen is once people land their first podcast, they get on the shows, they're on fire. Like they are so stoked. They want to tell that story 100 more times. And then they get the assets back of, hey, it just went live, and they can share it on social media. They didn't even have to edit it. And now they're really on fire. And so there's kind of this addictive nature to it as well. And that's why I say start small. You'll start to feel the energy and the momentum, and you're going to want to go all in. So that's where I would say to start. Kind of any MSP, start on that small scale and then ramp up from there.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And Shante, it's our final question, unfortunately, because you guys are so good. We've already been talking for getting on for about 13, 14 minutes. So let's take those podcasts as the first step. And I agree, that's a great place to get going and build up your enthusiasm and see if actually you like being interviewed. Shante, where would you take it from there? And just give us kind of 2 or 3 bullet points where you would expect an MSP to go from there.
Yeah, I mean, most of you will be compelled to go for top national, but what I have learned in my 20 years of experience is industry and trade is probably going to be where you have your buyers and your most interested parties. It's more niche, but it's going to do a lot for you. And then I would say digital publications. You could canvas an entire space of digital publications. You could be a contributing author to digital publications. Start leveraging those for local. If local would be meaningful to you, it's not necessarily meaningful to everyone. And then with all that, you use all of that for leverage for top national. A top national journalist, if you're showing up in trade, the validation that you're a good resource some of that work's already been done for them.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great checklist. Thank you very much. You guys need to come back on the show, right? I need to get you back on. We only allow a guest on once a year. So 2026 or 2027, I'd love to get you guys back on. In fact, it'd be really interesting to have you back on in 2 years to see how that AI, that huge leap forward. I mean, who knows what's going to be happening in 2 years' time, right? But let's finish up for now. And you can arm wrestle. I know you're in physically, geographically separate locations, but you can arm wrestle about who's going to tell us about good news. What do you do and how do you help MSPs?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So good news. We create visibility systems. So we're not a PR firm, but we help people engineer that omnipresence that you would get from a PR agency. It's that you own the contacts and we do all that research. We turn it into a visibility system for you. And then we mobilize that so that it's turnkey. So you are the one sending the pitches, but we create those pitches for you. And we support you for a year under every single project. But to get started with us, I would say go to our website. There is, it's highgoodnews.com. Hi is in hello, highgoodnews.com. And we have a banner there where you could get a podcast sampler list. So if you opt into that, takes you through about a 2-minute intake, and we will tell you a handful of podcasts that you would be perfect for. And then we can start talking about next steps.
Paul Green's MSP Marketing Edge.